Welcome. This is All Minus One Quick Shots. Folks, today I want to talk about a interesting exchange I had last night with Adam Kolkesh on The Ends Justify the Memes. That is the live show that I participate in, my other baby, my other project here on the interwebs, and that is a separate channel on YouTube and over on DLive, by the way. Unlike here, All Minus One, which can be found in lots of different places like PeerTube and BitChute and Rumble, as well as locals. In any case, we were talking to Adam, and kind of right away, Adam just took over the show, and that's fine. I invited him on the show. I want to let him speak. But it was really interesting how he brought everything back to his ideology. And again, I'm not really against his ideology and the things he was saying. But as my producer and co-host mentioned to me, he said it must be pretty interesting to have everything all figured out. And that's what ideology does for people. It allows them to figure things out. And then what they do, and we know this very strongly from what is going on the left, is this: they then manipulate and mold the language into a form that is incomprehensible to people who are outside of that ideological cult. Now, again, I'm not saying that Adam Kolkesh is a part of this, but I'm just saying, just in general, when you have an ideology, an ideological point of view, you tend to view the world through a certain lens, right? The closest thing that I have to an ideology is truth. This is in part why I am a Christian. Now, you might say, Bill, but the truth, how do you know what the truth is? Or Christianity has been disproven, or yada, yada, yada. Well, I would say, no, you haven't searched hard enough and you haven't found the truth yourself. To my mind, that is my highest value, the truth. And that has, of course, influenced me to be in the faith of Christianity, to follow Christ. And so for me, that is my ideology. And therefore, if anything conflicts with what I believe to be the truth and I am presented with new evidence, I then change my perspective. See, because unlike a other ideology, say SJWism, postmodernism, neo-Marxism, or anything else, republicanism, Democrats, leftism, libertarianism, whatever, anarchism, you have to come up with very specific things to continue to justify the things that seem to oppose your beliefs. And so for the SJW feminist intersectionality types, it's always about power, and it's always about race, and it's always about sexism. So there's always some form of bigotry going on, except for the real bigotry is on their side. Now, folks, if you don't understand what the word bigot means, it has a specific meaning, and it basically means that you are not open to new ideas, new positions. And that's what ideologies do. Now, you could again make this accusation of me and say, well, Bill, aren't you not open to new ideas or new positions when it comes to, say, things of the faith? And I would say, no, I'm actually very open to new ideas and positions, but I have to weigh them based on the biblical teachings and the teachings of the early church fathers and the teachings of Christ and the apostles. That's how I have to look at it. And so if it seems to conflict with those things, then I have to look a little bit deeper. But when you have an ideology, whatever that ideology is, that is, say, political in nature about how the world works, then you, of course, are always going to fall back on what your ideology is, and therefore it limits the scope of your knowledge and your ability to learn. And that's an important thing to understand, because you could be wrong. I say it all the time. I could be wrong with the things that I say. I speak in very broad, general terms, or at least I believe I do, or I try to, about how the world runs. I believe it's run by NGOs. I think it's hard to refute that. I think it's run by corporations and by bankers and by non-governmental bodies that act as governments, such as the UN, or most most prominent in the news recently has been, of course, the World Economic Forum. And there are all kinds of organizations like this. But the point is The point is that these folks are dictating upon high how the policies go, and I can see that in how the policies are enacted globally all across the Western world. And the mind virus that they put out there, their ideologies, are infiltrated into the media and academia and Hollywood, and again, all around the world. So to me, it seems like a pretty simple conclusion, right? Instead of debating over, well, this guy is actually in charge, and no, the United States is still completely sovereign. Yeah, not really. Look at what we do. Look at all the foreign aid we give. So again, like, I have reasons to believe all that, but I don't believe that because I read something and it informed me that that is how it is, that my ideology says that that must be what it is. For instance, the SJWs have this ideology that capitalism is evil. In fact, capitalism is fascism. Of course, that's completely idiotic, and they are wrong. And again, this is the problem with ideologies. They're wrong. Fascism has nothing to do with capitalism. In fact, fascism has everything to do with their ideology: collectivism, exclusion, being authoritarian, controlling economies, centralized authority, and those sort of things. Another interesting thing that I wanted to bring up was living your ideology, because, see, again, my ideology is my highest value, and that is truth. And so I try and live that as much as possible. And I'm not perfect at it, folks. I'm a failure at life, just like you are, just like we all are. We are imperfect beings. We make mistakes and we falter. And sometimes, depending on our emotional state or our mental state, we make poor decisions. We do things that we know better to not do, right? We do stupid things against our better nature because it feels good in the moment. And I understand that all of humanity is like this, which is why there is a need to forgive people and a need to foster leadership and bolster these people up with love and respect, and to have sympathy for folks for being in dark places. Now, the difference is, how long are you going to contend with it? How often are you going to go about and lie to yourself in the world? How often are you going to espouse things that you believe in and then turn around and do something completely different? And what I tend to find is that people who are ideologues do this consistently. They do it constantly. And those who say that they would not be one thing tend to act exactly like that. Of course, we see this a lot in the supposed Me Too type movement, right? We see these things. So live your principles and live whatever ideology you have. But again, I like to say, I'm not really an ideological person. I take things on a matter of fact and on whatever the issue is that comes to me. I don't like tribalistic games. I don't like ideologies in general. I tend to amalgamate the two things. It's like I often say that leftists and people who are liberty-minded actually have a lot in common. The problem is that the liberty-minded folks who are ideological, well, they can't concede to leftists, and leftists certainly can't concede to liberty-minded folk, because liberty-minded folk don't want to control anything, and leftists do, because people on the left are inherently revolutionary authoritarians. That is literally the difference between the left, right, and the spectrum. That starts all the way back from the French Revolution. The folks who were on the left sat on the left side of the French, it wasn't really the parliament, but the monarch system, and the people who were for the monarchy and the old monarchy and religion sat on the right, and that's where we get that from. So it changes depending on what perspective we're looking at. Modern conservatives, people who are on the right in the United States, are people who believe in, constitutionalism, the founding fathers, generally speaking. Not everyone. But people who are on the left believe in progressivism and getting away from the Constitution. Again, they are the revolutionaries. The Constitution is a document of more or less anti-authoritarianism. This was a point that was brought up by, a point opposing this was brought up by Adam Kolkesh last night. I don't necessarily agree with him, but I would go with the words of Frederick Douglass on this, and thinking that in his mind that the Constitution was originally an authoritarian slavers document, and he later realized no, it actually is an anti-authoritarian document set up to allow for the abolition of slavery. So, anyways, with that, like, live your principles, understand where they come from, and understand the left-right dichotomy is sort of always shifting, but know that people on the left tend to be the hardcore ideologues. People on the right are often hardcore ideologues too, but there's a difference between having an authoritarian style ideologue and a non-authoritarian style ideologue, right? And guys, if you're going to be in some sort of ideology, then you're going to have to commit to the language of the ideology, and you're going to limit your mind and the way that it can think. The only ideology, like I said before, that I hold is truth. It's my highest value. And that even comes before love. A lot of people talk about love, but you can't love without truth. You really can't. People say that they love all kinds of things, and yet they are willing to destroy it because they love it. I don't think that's love. I think that's possessiveness. I don't think they understand the difference. In any case, guys, that is pretty much all I have for today. Once again, think about these things. Think about where you are at in your life, what you believe. Are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? Are you a Libertarian? Are you a classical liberal? Are you all these different political ideologies? Now, why are these out there? Well, they're kind of to help people along and to kind of conjoin together a little bit so they can coalesce and decide that we have we have a number of people that want to bring about these things. And for me, I'm just not really into any of that. I just want to know what the truth is, and I want people to explore and find the truth. And I want our societies to be strong. And for me, that means keeping to an ideal of individualism within the collective, and the collective must stay relatively small. Like I said, guys, that's about all I have for you today. With all that, this has been All Minus One Quick Shots, and I wish you all well.